Hello there, and welcome back to an amorphous blob with hands and a poorly drawn clapperboard for a face, because as far as you know, that is what I look like. Today, I wanted to take another look at my legendary creature collection with you guys, take a look through it, talk about the cards, because as I mentioned in the last time I did this, this collection is really important to me, and I really care a lot about it, and I really care a lot about Magic the Gathering's lore on the whole, and legendary creatures have a lot to do with that. So last time we looked at my collection from standard sets, from Return to Ravnica to Innistrad Crimson Vow, and while I was initially going to just go from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty onward, I figured since that's newer sets, there's a lot of holes, I'd go with the more complete section of my collection. So these are cards from the Commander specific sets. Hey, it's me in post coming in to say now's actually a really good time to be looking at the legendary creatures because of the upcoming Ravnica Remastered set, which is reprinting a lot of really fun, really cool legendary creatures and commanders. Unfortunately, only one of which will be seen in this video, because most of those are coming from past Ravnica sets, not Commander sets. But the one that is being reprinted that I'm showing off today is a really good one, so I will point that out when it comes. Anyway, thanks to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring this video, and if you guys could check out the link down in the description or in the comments below to check out Ravnica Remastered. And on with the thing. So first off here, we have Commander 2011. This was the first Magic the Gathering set specifically involving the Commander format, and actually I believe is what codified the name Commander, where previously it had been known as Elder Dragon Highlander or EDH. And technically wasn't called Magic 2011 because I think they initially intended this as, a standalone kind of thing. They probably didn't initially anticipate this becoming such a, phenomenon, the Commander format itself becoming so dominant, so popular, and in turn the Commander set becoming that yearly release. So for this first set, they kicked us off with 5 wedge-colored decks, which gave us our first wedge-colored legendary creatures since the alternate universe Primordial Dragons from Planeshift, which those were the first wedge-colored legendary creatures ever. And each deck had 2 face cards, and 1 enemy-colored, sort of, not an alternate commander, because you couldn't have them pilot the deck, but just sort of an additional commander if you wanted to make an enemy-colored deck. Admittedly, I do have some holes. This is the main part of this section that I do have holes in, because I started playing in 2012 with Return to Ravnica. This was before I started playing. Most of these cards are cards I've either traded for or gotten secondhand somehow. But there's a lot of really cool cards. Zedru the Greathearted is, really fun gifting strategy. We have the Mimeoplasm here, which reestablished Muruganda as a cool plane, which we then later saw in cards like Invasion of Muruganda, which is great. And the Mimeoplasm itself just remains a very fun, very popular card, getting to sort of combine 2 creatures from graveyards. Moving right along, though, to Commander 2013, which gave us the opposite of wedge decks. It gave us 5 shard decks, like the Shards of Alara. And it was actually kind of interesting. I was barely able to get any of these decks. These came out while I was playing, but I was still new to the Commander format, didn't really have anyone to play with. But it was actually especially hard to find these decks for me. Notably, the Grixis deck led by Jeleva Nephalia's Scourge, because that deck contained a card called True Name Nemesis, which apparently just boomed in, I believe, Legacy. Because it was a simple card. It was a merfolk that had protection from the player of your choice. But in the format at the time, it was just so dominant. This deck was the only way to get it. If you were running it, you probably wanted 4 copies. The deck was hard to get. I did end up getting the Marith Will of the Wild deck, mostly because that was the only one I could find. But, and unfortunately, I never really got to play it. Marith here, fun fact, also has an unfortunate error in that it doesn't have the text X can't be 0 for the second ability. They had to issue an immediate errata because it says X, remove X +1/+1 counters from it, choose 1, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, deals X damage to target creature or player, and this is the important one, create an XX green elemental creature token. And that's a problem because if X can be 0, you just pay nothing to get infinite enter the battlefield and death triggers, which is obviously big whoopsie daisy. But Commander 2013 got some pretty fun stuff. Derevi for a while was considered pretty powerful, being able to subvert the command tax. But overall, just some, fun cards. Commander 2014 is actually where it gets really exciting for me personally. First of all, this was the first set to have Planeswalkers as the face commanders. It was the we had 5 monocolor decks, each with the Planeswalker as a face commander with the rules text, so and so can be your commander, which is the first time we'd seen that, and that would later come back multiple times. But the other important thing about 2014, which is actually much more significant for me personally, is that, so Commander 2011 and 2013, those were all new characters, pretty much. They were created specifically for these sets. Commander 2014, they kind of realized, wait a sec, we're printing a whole bunch of new cards. We have a whole bunch of characters who haven't gotten cards, who really should have cards. Why don't we take these opportunities to give them cards? So the 5 face commanders were Nahiri the Lithomancer. You know, we had heard about the Lithomancer as this powerful ancient planeswalker who helped seal the Eldrazi, and now we had a name and a face for her. Teferi got his first planeswalker card. We saw Ob Nixilis not only as a planeswalker, because we hadn't seen him that way at the time, but also in his human form long before he became a demon. We also had Freyleys, who had never even got a legendary creature, so we got Freyleys for a commander, for a planeswalker for the first time. And the only new character was Duretti, who would later, who was the red planeswalker who would later come back in Conspiracy Take the Crown. So those were the face commanders. There was only one alternate commander per deck, so we only have 5 cards here for Commander 2014. But we have Jazal Goldmane, who is Ajani's older brother, who is significant in Ajani's story because he's kind of what kicks off, you know, Ajani has the card Ajani Vengeant. Well, he's vengeant because his brother was killed, and Jazal's axe is actually the other axe head. Ajani has the dual bladed axe. One of those axes is Jazal's axe, which you can see right there. Then we have Stitcher Geralf and Ghoul-Caller Jissa here. Characters who are really interesting because they were formulated. They were put into flavor text, and they were, you know, put into names of cards after the set was, you know, design of the set was finalized. It was all flavor text and art stuff. And they even had a really fun story written about them as, you know, these 2 feuding necromancer siblings who were trying to out-zombie each other, basically. But they weren't in the set, and players really clamored for them. But they couldn't have been in the set, because they weren't they weren't characters until after. So it was really cool to finally see them on cards properly, you know, 1 for black, 1 for blue, and we later saw them together as a card, Jissa and Geralf in Eldritch Moon, and later they got their own cards again in Innistrad, Midnight Hunt, and Crimson Vow. Here we have Felden of the Third Path, who, Felden is, you know, very pretty old story involving him, where he goes and he learns all the colors of mana one at a time to try to use them to bring back his deceased wife. This is him having learned red mana to try to reconstruct her as a construct, which is why you can pay him cost and put a token onto the battlefield that is a copy of target creature card in your graveyard, and then you sacrifice that creature because he's trying to rebuild the wife that he lost. It's a really tragic story and has this wonderful flavor text, she will come back to me. And all around, Felden is just a home run card. We also have here Titania, Protector of Argoth, who later came back. You know, she's a major figure in the Brothers War story. She later got her own card, again, in the Brothers War set. So it's really cool to see these characters who never got cards, getting their one, you know, initial card, and then getting more cards later. I love to see it. Commander 2015 is another very fun one. We got 5 enemy color decks. They did wedges, they did shards, they did monocolor, now they are on enemy color. And we have a really nice mix of returning characters and new characters. So like here we have, you know, Arjun, the Shifting Flame, Anya, Merciless Angel. Those are all brand new characters. You know, they got little blurbs, but other than that, not all that significant. But then we have characters like Daxos the Returned, who Daxos was an important character in the original Theros story. He was Elspeth's lover, who she was tricked into killing, unfortunately. And this is him having come back from the underworld to try to find his lost love. Although, now, like all zombies on Theros, now that he's returned from the underworld, he's lost all his memories. He can't even remember Elspeth. So he's searching for a lover he can never even remember. And then when we return to Theros with Theros Beyond Death, Daxos got properly revived as a demigod. And it's really nice to have that sort of arc for him. We have alive Daxos, zombie Daxos, reborn Daxos, and it's really cool to see. Azuri, Claw of Progress here. Azuri was a character in Scars of Mirrodin, and we hadn't really seen his fate until we saw Azuri, Claw of Progress here, confirming he had been taken by the Phyrexians. He had been completed by Jin Gitaxias, which is why he has blue in his identity now instead of just green. Karlov of the Ghost Council is my absolute favorite in this entire set easily. If you saw my lore commander video for Commander Masters, I talked about that then, that Karlov is one of my major commander decks that I really care a lot about and put a lot of work into. You know, Karlov, very powerful card in my opinion. You know, a 2/2 for 2, whenever you gain life, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, so that's 2 counters per life gain trigger, and then you can also remove counters and pay a cost to exile a creature. Very powerful, and also just very flavorful, as Karlov is the leader of the Obsidat and the patriarch of the Karlov family. He's one of the original founders of the Orzhov and grandfather of a major character, Teysa Karlov, and it's actually referenced in the flavor text here. Does Teysa think me blind to her scheming? Ambition runs in our family. Which, love that. And Teysa, obviously, very important figure in Murders at Karlov Mansion, the upcoming set next year, which I'm super looking forward to. Karlov, unfortunately, himself is dead, but Teysa, well, she's also probably dead. At the time of recording this, unclear, almost probably definitely also dead. Anywho, I initially used this specific card as the commander, but my partner actually got me one of the Judge promos, which has some nice alternate art that I really enjoy, and I use that card now. Hi, it's me in post again, saying that Karlov, my boy Karlov here, he is the one who's getting reprinted into Ravnica Remastered. He's actually got 3 different versions. He's got the normal frame, he's got the old retro border frame, and he's actually got a new anime art borderless version, which is pretty neat. I do wish the art were a little more blobby in the head regions, but that is okay, and it is very cool nonetheless. That is all. Carrying on. Moving on to Commander 2016. Commander 2016 is very significant for a couple of reasons. One, it gave us our first 4-color legendary creatures. Each deck was 4 colors. Each deck got 1 4-color legendary creatures. The only 4-color cards to my knowledge before this, besides split cards, were the Nephilim from the original Ravnica block, which a lot of players clamored for a long time. You know, why aren't these cards legendary? Can you errata them to be legendary? And Wizards finally gave us what we wanted with Commander 2016. So we got these really cool, really elegant designs. I really love all these designs. Atraxa, Brea, especially... Yidris, very fun, flavorful, evocative, and honestly just pretty powerful designs. The other big thing, though, about 2016 is it introduced the partner mechanic. And there were 2 of each enemy color pairing and 1 of each ally color pairing, all of whom had partner. Just sort of split between the various decks. And that was so that, well, if you didn't like one of the 4 cards they gave you, of the 4 colors, you can just make your own combo. How about let's throw Akiri together with Ikra Shadiki, and there you go. That is a red, white, black, green deck. That's 4 colors. Unfortunately, in retrospect, it was realized putting them on 2-color creatures, allowing that kind of flexibility, especially with how powerful some of these cards are on their own, it was just too much, too strong, too powerful. And from then on, they resolved either to have only subset partner, like the Friends Forever mechanic for the Stranger Things secret layer, or only put partner on monocolor creatures, which is what they ended up doing for Commander Legends. But, so Commander 2016, we also got a very nice mix, again, of returning characters and new characters. We got characters like Akiri, who later returned in Zendikar Rising as a very important character in that set. We have Atraxa, Praetor's Voice, the perfect archangel created by the ultimate culmination of all the Praetors except for Urabrask, which is why she lacks red in her color identity. So not only is she a really fun, cool, very elegant design, just, some keyword soup, and at the beginning of your end step, proliferate. Beautiful. Doesn't need more than that. But we got to see Atraxa come back in Phyrexia All Will Be One and in March of the Machine. She also in Phyrexia All Will Be One got to basically preview the upcoming Battle Permanent. And so it's really cool to see a character who, was initially kind of a one-off character in a Commander set be featured in such a major way. Bruce Tarl was on some flavor text in the original Zendikar block. Cool to see him get a card. Kaidel had a really, really nice story about her and her god Krufix. I really, really enjoy that story. And we have like Kainos and Tiro of Meletis here, who you can actually see right in the background there. I'll probably put up the card so you can see it better. The Guardians of Meletis, that was actually a card in the original Theros set, which referenced the how historians recorded, feuding kings who had, fought over Meletis. But in reality, they were actually peaceful lovers, and now we get to see those peaceful lovers. And I don't believe these are our first gay Magic characters. I don't think that to be the case, but they are definitely our first gay couple featured together on a card. We would later get like Hal and Alana, but it was very cool to see Kainos and Tiro here. Rayan last the Abzan after the Abzan Khan succumbed to the dragons, surrendered to the dragons. Rayan was the last sort of leader of the Abzan who tried to hold out in the new Khan's timeline and not get killed off by dragons. Ultimately, she was killed off by dragons, but she tried. Silas Wren, I believe, was a childhood rival of Teferi. Vile Smasher the Fierce was originally Ankle Shanker in the original Khan's timeline, but in the new Dragons of Tarkir timeline, with the invention of Dragonfire being a thing that still exists in the world, she has found her calling as a Vile Smasher, and that is her name, and it's really cool to see her as a legendary creature. And then we have Ludwig. So Ludwig is a character, like Jisindrolf, who was referenced in a lot of flavor text and names and such, like Ludwig's test experiment, test subject, that big ol' egg, and it sounded really cool. Kind of mad scientist, Dr. Frankenstein-esque character. Really, really cool in concept. And people were really excited to see a card for him someday, like Jisindrolf. However, this card for him just isn't great. It has Partner, for one thing. Some people complain about that because they're like, oh, he's like a reclusive kind of necro-alchemist. Why would he have Partner? But then again, he does like collaborate with other scientists. There's a plot point where he is collaborating with a Geralf, actually, so that's not that unreasonable. Red-blue feels weird not to have black in there, but red-blue is, mad sciencey type. I guess that's fine. The big problem, though, is the rules text, which is just, at the beginning of each player's end step, that player may draw a card if a player other than you lost life this turn. That doesn't really have anything to do with zombies, or reanimation, or necroalchemy, or anything that people thought Ludwig would care about, so it was really disappointing to see this as Ludwig's first card. However, Ludwig did get a new card in Midnight Hunt, which I think captures what he's all about a lot better, and it was really great to see. Commander 2017 was when they kind of ditched the 5 decks, each with different, aligning color pairings or whatever. And they were just like, okay, we're going to do 4 decks at a time now, which makes a lot of sense because you typically play in a pod of 4 players. If you have all the decks, then you're left with, a deck sitting out. Whereas if you have 4 decks, well, then there you go. Everyone gets to play all of them. But they also changed, so, obviously then they couldn't do, like, ally color pairings because you'd have a pairing left out, so they just went with theming instead. So they did Tribal for Commander 2017. And they had Vampire Tribal, Cat Tribal, Wizard Tribal, and Dragon Tribal. All of which, super, super cool. In my opinion, all 4 of those decks were home runs in mechanics, in the new cards. I love to see all of it, The problem that has been well acknowledged by, designers at this point was the Eminence mechanic. For instance, Edgar Markov here, Eminence. When you cast another vampire spell, if Edgar Markov is in the command zone or on the battlefield, create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. That is really powerful. Having an effect like that always in the command zone is busted, frankly. And there's a reason that Edgar is so sought after. If you're playing a vampire deck, you're playing Mardu, you want Edgar. Also, like, ignoring all that, though, very cool to see Edgar. We later saw him, of course, in Crimson Vow as being kind of controlled by Olivia as she awakens to marry him and unite the vampire bloodlines. But this is Edgar in his prime, the progenitor of the Markov bloodline, family lineage of vampires on Innistrad. This is Edgar at his fullest, the grandfather of Soren Markov, and I was so hyped to see this card. And honestly, with how powerful it is, it's just... So my cat just tried to jump into a box in the closet, and the box didn't have a lid, so she just fell in. She clearly wasn't expecting that. You okay, baby? Gwenny, honey, you okay? I think she's fine. Moving on. Some other notable things here. Lycia, Sanguine Tribune. We see kind of the introduction. I believe this is the first card that references this Roman-inspired plane, kind of a counterpart to Theros' Greek inspirations. This, as of yet, unnamed plane seems to draw Roman inspirations and really focuses on like the legionnaires and the big marble buildings and the senates and the tribunes, whatever. I hope we get to see that plane someday. It'd be really cool. Maricil, the Pretender, very important character in, I believe, the Ice Age set. That was not a block. Miri, Weatherlight Duelist. We had a couple cards from Miri before. Very, very important character throughout all of the Weatherlight saga. And previously we had seen her as Miri Cat Warrior and Miri the Curse. Neither of the cards is that powerful, so this is kind of an updated Miri from modern age, and she is much, much better for it. Okagachi Vengeful Kami is kind of an interesting one. The most powerful Kami, which are the spirits of Kamigawa, the most powerful Kami. The Kami that controlled the boundary between the Kami realm and the mortal realm. And in fact, the entire story of the original Kamigawa block was Kagachi's child, Kyodai, being taken from him, and him waging war on the mortals to try to get her back. And it felt weird to see this massive, all-powerful Kami be represented by a 6/6 with flying and trample, and a kind of mediocre ability. So, while we did get kind of a tribute to Okagachi in Neon Dynasty, I do hope we get to see a bit of a beefed-up Okagachi Legendary someday. This, something I think is really cool, is we have two versions of Taigam here. Taigam Ojitai Master and Taigam Sidisi's Hand. This represents Taigam, the character, in two separate timelines. So Taigam Sidisi's Hand is Taigam in the original Khans of Tarkir timeline. He is part of the Sultai Guild, and, like it says, is a vizier to Sidisi, the Khan of the Sultai. However, in the new Dragons of Tarkir timeline, that is not the route Taigam took. Instead, he grew up and was trained with the Ojitai, the the white-blue dragon clan. And I really love seeing these alternate paths. And it's especially home run from the fact that, okay, we got wizards for the wizard tribal and a guy who cares about dragons for the dragon tribal. Beautiful. Mwah. We also have the Dragon here, who, goodness gracious, super, super fun, super cool card. 10/10 for 9. Really powerful Eminence ability that makes all your dragons cheaper. And the Dragon, I think it only previously been referenced on the Scion of Dragon, but now we get to see the Big Daddy himself, who is actually, I believe, basically the progenitor of a lot of dragons throughout the multiverse, most notably the Elder Dragons of Dominaria. This is effectively Nicol Bolas and Ugin's dad, when you think about it like that. Phenomenal. And also Ramos Dragon Engine, another very important character, just very cool to see a card of, and also was cool to see later come back in the Brothers War set as part of the retro artifacts. Commander 2018 saw the return of Planeswalker commanders. We had green, white, blue enchantments with a new Planeswalker character, Estrid, who I really hope we get to see someday. I've heard that there are like issues with her, like her design, especially all the masks, which means she can't be brought back easily. But she's so cool. I really hope we see her again someday. We had red-blue artifacts led by Saheeli. We had black-green-red lands led by Lord Windgrace, who got his first card of his own. And we had black-white-blue deck manipulation, I believe, which was led by another new character, Amanatu, who is another character I really hope we get to see one day. She's got her own issues. She can, supposedly bend fate to her will and can see all of space and time. Bit of overpowered in terms of how you fit that character into a story. But anyway, Cool mix of cards here. We see Brutaclad kind of getting a glimpse into what's going on New Phyrexia. At the time, we didn't really know. We have Eric's Methes, who is a big, enormous island-sized kraken who I believe had an encounter with Kiora in one of her stories. And, Tawnos, that was, I believe, the first Tawnos card we got, very significant as Urza's apprentice, and later he got cards in Brothers War. So that's another instance of a character finally getting a card and then later showing up again. Tuvasa the Sunlit, very cool Ixalan character. I love Tuvasa, very, very powerful for Bont enchantments. Zancha, Sleeper Agent, previously seen on the card Sleeper Agent, which was a non-legendary creature. Amazing to see her get her own card. Kurik, Son of Yawgmoth, is another character who, caused a lot of trouble in the story when he infiltrated as a sleeper agent, basically, the Talarian Academy and managed to create a big ol' catastrophe. So it's cool to see him. Moving on, though, to Commander 2019 we're on now. We had sort of tribal themes, we had kind of general themes like artifacts, enchantments. Then we had mechanic themes, specific mechanics. So we had Naya Populate, we had Rakdos Madness, we had Jeskai Flashback, and we had Sultai Morph. And we got a lot of really cool strategies for those specific things, like Cadena, really neat Morph commander. Really glad to see stuff like that. I've always really wanted to build an Anya Falconwrath. And frankly, Anya's another character, existing character, got a card in Commander, as another one of the progenitors of the Innistradi vampires. Super cool to see her. And she returned as the, kind of wine aunt at a party in Innistrad Crimson Vow. Grevin, who had previously gotten a card, sort of the anti-Weatherlight, Captain of the Predator, like it says right on the tin, sort of the anti-Weatherlight ship throughout that saga. Chainer as well, Gerard, a lot of characters who had previously had cards getting new, frankly, in a lot of cases, better cards, which I honestly love to see them do. We also got our first legendary wall with Pramakan Sky Rampart, so that's really cool. We got Rayami here, who was the progenitor, not really progenitor of vampires on Zendikar, but was the first vampire, like it says, first of the fallen, the first person to fall to the Eldrazi influence that actually was the creation of the vampires. And then a new card for Tangarth, who I have a friend who has a beastly Tangarth deck. Really, really fun to play against, honestly. A new card for Volrath as well. So we had a lot of characters who were, known characters showing up for the first time, characters who maybe didn't have a name but were showing up, like Rayami, and characters who had cards in the past who are getting kind of updated, better cards. Moving on to Commander 2020. So this was the first Commander set that they really explicitly tied it to the set that was going on in Standard. So we had the Ikoria set. So they brought, because Ikoria was a wedge set, they brought back the 5 decks, and they made 5 wedge-colored decks. So they gave us 2 face commanders for each color pairing, as well as a partner with one ally color monster and the enemy color human, because that was a big thing with Ikoria, was the bonding of humans and monsters, which was one of the aspects of Ikoria that I really, really enjoyed. So it's cool to see here the partners, Trin, Champion of Freedom, Silvar, Devourer of the Free. Like, that's even ignoring mechanics, that's just fun. I really like Brelin, Sky Shark Rider, and Shabraz, the Sky Shark. Not only because, oh my god, Shark Bird. I love that. Like, Hyena Beast, Whale Wolf, Elemental Hound, Cat Nightmare, Shark Bird. I love the creature types that are going on in Ikoria. Shabraz just, though, is a very powerful card. The partner with, you can give target humans flying, ideally, to, partner that with Brelin. And whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on it, which is always a powerful effect. We got to see Jarina Kudrow, who was an extremely important character in the Ikoria story. If you read the novel, the novella, Ikoria, the Sundered Bond, she's very, very important. She doesn't actually get a card in the main set, but she gets to show up in Commander. So, at least they're not creating a character that's really important and then neglecting them. Similar, and she's another character. She shows back up later. We haven't returned to Ikoria yet, but in March of the Machine Aftermath, showing the wreckage of the city that she lives in, Dranith, we see her kind of taking the reins after her father's death and after the Phyrexian devastation that kind of ruled over the plane. We also have here some, very, very cool monsters. Calamax the Stormsire, Otrimi the Ever-Playful. A lot of, I know I keep saying this, really cool, really fun. They are. Like, I was obsessed with the theming that was going on with this set. Mutate was a beast of a mechanic. I am very partial to it. I know a lot of people are not, but I was glad to see we got an explicitly Mutate commander. That was very fun. So after Commander 2020, they started scaling down the yearly. They're like, okay, we're not really going to do yearly so much anymore. Well, they didn't actually say that quite yet, but they said, in addition, we are going to do two commander decks per set. And they're just going to be that sets commanders, and that's going to be just a thing we do now to help tie things in, tie the commander sets in with the sort of base standard set that was going on. So for Zendikar Rising, we got the Anawan the Ruin Thief, Anawan a returning character from the original Zendikar block, and Obun Moldaya Ancestor, who each had their own respective decks. And honestly, for the price point that they were at and the power level that they were at, really good starting decks. I really appreciated that kind of starting deck that they had available. That, they later kind of made some more explicitly starter decks with the commander starter decks. But that's basically what these decks were at the time, and that was really nice to see. These two, Wylith Soul of Steel and Isi Tyrant of Gyre Strait, were for Commander Legends, the precons that came out with Commander Legends. AC especially admittedly falls into, it's rough. They're both good cards. They're both fun cards. Wylith kind of falls into the, Boros aura and equipment that there's so many commanders for. Another one was not fully necessary. And AC is like, lands and card advantage. That's what I do. That makes me unique among the Simic. It doesn't. Kind of playing into the very tried commander archetype. For Kaldheim, though, we got Renar the Everwatchful for a spirit deck, spirit foretell deck, and we got Lathril, Blade of the Elves, one of the former gods of Kaldheim, fallen from godhood and usurped by the new gods, who led the elf deck. Both of those very cool characters. They each got their own story. That was another thing that I really loved that they started doing. The face commanders, they each got their own story. So if I'm remembering correctly, Obun and Anawan got their own stories. Lathril, Ranar each got their own stories. Commander 2021, this was the last yearly edition. This was Commander Strixhaven. They're like, okay, well, we did the two deck thing per set. We're going to go back to that, but let's just, for a second, we've got the enemy color pairings. Let's do 5. Let's just do 5. And they did. And they're definitely very thematic and flavorful decks with a lot of very fun cards. Harder for me to talk about, admittedly. I have played less with this specific set. And the one downside of doing, set specific things, especially for a new plane like Arcavios and Strixhaven, is that, okay, well, there are blurbs for these characters, but there's not honestly a lot to talk about. It was cool to see a food commander. It was cool to see some of the teachers that we didn't get to see in the main set, because the main set had a lot of the deans, didn't have a lot of the teachers. So we saw Brina, we saw Zephi, and I love the theming of some of these, like a Thunder Conductor. Wow! Amazing! Fun fact here, there is actually a typo in the rule set, so it actually says Zephi Thunder Collector deals 10 damage to an opponent chosen at random. Unfortunate. Whatever. Then, we do actually have the one that's probably most notable for me, Adrix and Nev Twincasters, I have in my Verizal the Split Current deck. I actually, in my previous video, I kind of left out cards. I just had sleeves in the place of cards where they were in decks. This time I actually went back and kind of took them all out because I realized it was pretty lame to not have them in the binder when I'm showing it off and just saying, well, this is where this card would be. No, here they are. They're basically a token doubler, which, especially in Simic colors, is really great for a deck like Verizal, which, for at least my version of the deck, creates a lot of copies and a lot of tokens. So Adrix and Nev, great to have. Essex was interesting. Essex being a legendary fractal, because fractals in the main set of Strixhaven were only on tokens. Essex is no longer the only fractal, I believe, that is actually printed on a card, but was at the time, and it was interesting to see that choice being made. Octavia, Living Thesis, if nothing else, I love the repetition of 8 generic mana. It's an 8/8. The spell costs 8 less to cast if you have 8 or more instants or sorceries in your graveyard. Ward 8. Whenever you cast yourself, copy an instant or sorcery spell. Target creature pay 8/8. And also, it's just an elemental octopus made up of the essays and papers of students, which I think is kind of brilliant. We also have Ruxa, Patient Professor, which is super fun, as basically a vanilla creatures commander, which is not something that we've seen very much of. And, I know, like, Maro's talked a lot about how difficult it is to support that, vanilla creatures, creatures with no rules text, but I think this is a fun way to do it. So then moving on here to, this is Commander Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. And this it came out alongside Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. And they're good. The decks are fine, the decks are fun. D&D is in a weird place of, like, not really falling in Universes Beyond because it is a Wizards property, but it is also not canon to Magic. I do include them with kind of my main collection because they have the normal border. They don't have that triangle at the bottom. They're closer, I feel like, to in-universe Magic cards than they are to Universes Beyond. But, above everything else, the commander decks for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms gave us some very powerful, very fun cards. Prosper Tomebound, especially, is a beast, giving you, the 1/4 with Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until the end of your next turn. Whenever you play a card from exile, create a treasure token. That is bonkers. It is so easy to steamroll and just go completely out of control with treasure that ramps you into other cards with Prosper. And I've seen multiple Prosper decks just run wild at tables. We also got cards like Wolfgarb, Icewind Dale, and Caddy Bree, characters who were not in the main set, but are characters who are actually established in D&D lore as being part of the adventuring party, I believe, of Dritz Do'Urden, one of the biggest characters in all of Forgotten Realms lore. Moving on to Innistrad, both Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow. So, something notable here, they started not just having commander cards in the commander decks, they also started printing commander cards that would only be found in set boosters. They were part of the commander set so that you could open them in the set boosters, but you wouldn't be able to play them in standard. So they effectively were, here's some extra cards for commander, was effectively the idea. So, we got some, like Wilhelt the Rock Cleaver here, very powerful zombie deck. That deck right out of the box, pretty good baseline for a zombie deck. We got to see, Lenore, Autumn Sovereign, who plays into the witchiness and the coven mechanic, which is fun to see. Eloise Nephalia Sleuth is one of our investigate commanders, which I love to see. Clues are obviously such a great mechanic. I think a lot of people really agree on that. What I'm interested to see, though, is with the introduction of the detective creature type into universes within Magic, is Eloise and cards like Eloise, are they going to get updated to detective? That's what I want to know, because they've done worse, I'm sure, but Legendary Creature, Human Detective Rogue, bit much for a single type line. Gorex the Tomb Shell, I love Big Zombie Turtle, very fun. Linda's my favorite card in Midnight Hunt Commander. This is the card for this set that was only found in set boosters. It very explicitly a curse commander, a Grixis curse commander. Death Touch, whenever a curse is put in your graveyard from the battlefield, return it to the battlefield at the beginning of your next upkeep. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may attach a curse attached to you to one of your opponents. So you can curse yourself to then move the curses onto opponents to get an extra bonus, if you do draw 2 cards. And that's like a really interesting design. Moreover, though, you can actually see Linda here. It has, I'll put the card up on the screen, has a voodoo doll of sorts for the unluckiest planeswalker. A planeswalker who was first shown, I believe, in Commander 2017. I'm looking at yes, Commander 2017, in a series of curses throughout the multiverse. We actually got to see the art prompts, and each one was shown on a different plane. One was on Ravnica, one was on Fiora, one was on Innistrad, and in each one, he was in a real bad situation. And with Innistrad Midnight Hunt, we got to see, well, the source of that, unlucky events in his life. It's Linda. He was a particularly annoying man she met one day, and she never let go of that grudge and still continues to torment him. That is another character I am desperate to see someday, the unluckiest planeswalker. Frankly, don't give him a name. Just call him the unluckiest planeswalker. That's all I want to see. And my dreams will be complete. You know? Anyway, Innistrad, not Midnight Hunt, that was the first one. Crimson Vow gave us 2 tribal commanders. We got spirits, we got vampires, both pretty fun. Strephon, Mara Progenitor, another one of the progenitors. I love seeing cards like that. Specifically, like, Edgar, Anye, Strephon. I like seeing the original progenitors of the vampire lineages on Innistrad, and I don't think we have all of them yet. Like, we got Runo in Crimson Vow. I don't know who else we're missing, and we obviously have multiple Olivias at this point. Don't think we have all of them yet, though. Hope to see that someday. And we also got some more partner with mechanics, which is never something I'm going to complain about. I love the flavor that comes with partner with so much. I talked about that a little bit with the Ikoria set, but just the things that they're able to do to tie cards together flavorfully, love it. So then an Umbris Fear Manifest, that was the set booster exclusive commander card here, which is a nightmare and horror commander, which is very, very, very welcome, in my opinion. Then we have Kagawa Neon Dynasty, one of my favorite sets in recent years. We're so scared of returning to Kamigawa, and they really knocked it out of the park. They did such a good job on, the contrast between the new and the old, and integrating, the kami into technology, and seeing how the Kamigawa of old Japanese folklore evolved into kind of this cyberpunk plane, with the duality therein. And it's super, super fun to see. So the 2 decks were Kotori Pilot Prodigy Vehicles and Chishiro the Shattered Blade Modified, which is, if a creature is equipped, enchanted, or has counters on it, it is modified. Now, I never ended up playing this Gruul deck. I did play Kotori, and I actually have Kotori still built, only lightly modified. Another one of honestly, out of all the set-specific commander decks, one of the most powerful out of the box, especially with the alternate commander, Shorikai, Genesis Engine, a vehicle that has the flavor text that it can be your commander. I automatically include vehicles in my collection because they can become creatures. They're basically honorary legendary creatures if we're being real, but Shorikai can explicitly be your commander. But it also just has a very powerful ability. 1 tap, draw 2 cards, discard a card, and create a 1/1 pilot who will be able to help crew that mighty crew 8 cost. Very, very powerful. And honestly, Kotori herself should not be one to be overlooked. I actually usually play with Kotori because it feels less busted sometimes. And still her ability, vehicles you control have crew 2, works obviously really well with Shorikai. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact creature you control gains lifelink and vigilance. It can really pop off. We also got, actually, I believe, 7 total? Is that right? 7? I think that's right. 7 set exclusive cards. We got 5 Myojin, which were, we had Myojin in the original Kamigawa block, like, the most significant being Myojin of Knight's Reach, who was able to who was a significant figure in basically dragging characters from Kamigawa to not Kamigawa, which is how the Toshiro family line ended up on Dominaria. So we got to see more Myojin, who are just Kami, Myojin of Blooming Dawn, Cryptic Dreams, Roaring Blades, Grim Betrayal, and Towering Might. But then we also got to see, first of all, Yoshimaru Ever Faithful, which is a direct reference, I believe, to, I think the dog's name is Hachiko or something. I'm not going to go into details because I'm going to butcher it, but it basically is mirrored in Yoshimaru, who has been left behind by the Wanderer and now waits for her return. And so not only does whenever another legendary permanent enter the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Yoshimaru, which is really good, especially for a 1/1 for 1, but he also has partners, so you can put him with any of the other partners, which is very great to see. Then we have Goshintai of Life's Origin, which is really... it's a shrine commander. That's explicitly what it is. They did the cycle of 5 shrines. They've done so many shrines in the past, but they did the cycle of 5 shrine creatures in Neon Dynasty, and Goshintai of Life's Origin really ties them all together. 1 mana of each color, tap, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You can resurrect your shrines. And whenever it or another shrine enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 shrine enchantment creature token. Obviously, since the most, if not all, of the other shrines basically scale depending on how many shrines you have, creating 1/1 shrine tokens is crazy. Absolutely crazy. Moving on to Commander Streets of New Capenna, I really don't have a lot to talk about for this one. It's a similar thing of, like, I didn't end up playing any of these decks, and a lot of these are brand new characters. Like, I'm glad we got to see some of them, like Angelo was a notable, maybe not super significant, but at least notable character in the stories. So it's cool to, make sure even if he doesn't get a card in the main set, at least he's not thrown to the wayside. We also got our first legendary Phoenix with Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame, which is honestly kind of crazy. It had taken this long to get a legendary Phoenix. And then we have Oscar Rubbish Reclaimer, which I am still uncertain if that is supposed to be a reference to Oscar the Grouch. I really hope it is. And then we have Benny Brax, Zoologist, and a couple others here as set exclusives. Then we return to D&D with Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, which another thing where I don't really have a lot to say other than, look, more D&D characters, and also some of these decks are considered extremely powerful out of the box, notably this Nalia de Arnis here with the Party Up deck is considered generally extremely powerful right out of the box. More significantly, in my opinion, was the Horror deck, the Horror Tribal deck, which is a very fun tribal archetype that hadn't really gotten a lot of support before, besides cards like Umbris, who I talked about earlier. So it was fun to see. And then obviously the alternate commanders here, each of them has a background instead of the traditional, we have one enemy colored commander, we have another enemy colored commander. These just get to choose a background so you can create enemy colored commanders, basically. Dominaria United, another, return to Dominaria, first time since the set Dominaria. We had 2 decks, which Planeswalker Commanders. First time we've had that in a set-specific commander set. We had Jared Carthalion, and we had Dahada, Binder of Wills. Dahada, second time we've seen her after her first appearance in Modern Horizons 2, and Jared, first time we've seen him as a Planeswalker. We first saw him as a legendary creature. I believe also in Commander Legends. I was about to say in Modern Horizons. He was in Commander Legends. But it was cool to see him get his own Planeswalker card. The thing that's really unfortunate, so it was 5 colors matter. As many colors as you can get, that's what's important for that deck. It's so cool in theory. I look at that deck, I thumb through it, I'm like, I love this. It's such a fun idea, and fun to make a way that's a 5-color deck that's not just 5-color good stuff, like the Ur-Dragon often turns into. Or like Golos, Tireless Pilgrim, back, when he was played. It's a different way to design a deck about that. Unfortunately, it just kind of flops. I've played it multiple times. It's just not a very good deck, and it's such a bummer, because I felt like it had so much potential. On the other hand, Dahada Binder of Wills is very powerful right out of the box. Legendary, tribal. How could I not love it? So we have 1 alternate face commander here, but then also 6 additional legendary creatures that were printed just for this deck. Notable ones here, the Peregrine Dynamo I think is a very, very interesting card. 3 mana, 1/5 with haste, 1 tap, copy target activated or triggered ability from a source you control that's from another legendary source that's not a commander. It's very particular, but it's an interesting way to kind of enable some shenanigans, basically, in a pretty neat way, but without getting it degenerate by being able to pair it with a commander. Anywho, so then we have Bladewing. First time we've seen Bladewing in a while. We previously had Bladewing as both an alive dragon, as well as the Bladewing family lineage that would then be spawned from that. And also previously as an undead dragon skeleton, but here he is back again. You'll love to see it. Moira or Borg Haunt later actually came back as a Phyrexianized, we'll see her in a little bit, Phyrexianized version in the black-white commander deck for March of the Machines, which I think is honestly pretty interesting to introduce a character and then a few sets later be like, nope, they're Phyrexian now. Interesting nonetheless. Cool to see a Griffin commander. It just, like, you can just use it as Griffin tribal. Griffin is not is really not a tribe that's gotten like a lot of support, so it's nice to see. Moving on here, oh no, my first absence. This is one of these set booster exclusives, Green Sleeves Morrow Sorcerer. I just unfortunately have not been able to get my hands on her. More significantly though, we had the legends that are basically blasts from the past. They are all reimagined versions of legendary characters from Legends, the first set to have legendary characters. A lot of really, really, really cool stuff here. You know, the Ever-Changing Dane is a new, improved version of Half Dane. Orca, Ramirez, like every one of these characters had a version of themselves in Legends. But a lot of the Legends cards were weak. Some of these characters, as they were shown in Legends, were just vanilla creatures. Overcosted vanilla creatures at that. But to see these characters finally get proper life breathed into them with new cards was so wonderful to see. And I think this was genuinely a very, very good, exciting thing that Wizards did with this set. I really, really enjoyed it. And I hope to see stuff more like that in the future. One of my favorites here, I will just say, is Zero the Golden Sting, Insect Assassin, who whenever she attacks, you can put an egg counter on another target creature, and when it dies, you create a 1/1 insect and draw a card. And my friend has a very gruesome deck idea with, you know, very alien and creepy, you know, bursty kind of cards. Like this, where you basically, it's a wasp laying her eggs into a person and then they're hatching when they die. It's really screwy, but I also love it. For Brothers War, thematically fitting with the blasts from the past set, we have all old border cards. I believe there are, in the set boosters, I think, and collector boosters, you can get modern borders, but because these are the way the cards came in the commander decks, this is how I obtain them for this collection. And it's really great to see, you know, another version of Mishra, another version of Urza, as, you know, 3 color cards instead of just the 2 colors, which is the maximum they saw in the set Brothers War proper. Another version of Tawnos, another version of Ashnod. Huge characters throughout the story. Each got a card in the set proper, but it never hurts to kind of sprinkle in some extra colors for them as well. Now we have Phyrexia All Will Be One. Return to Phyrexia. Cool stuff. We had Ixel, Scion of Atraxa. We get to see, you know, what Atraxa's been up to and see kind of how some dissent is sometimes sowed within the Phyrexian ranks as Ixel more or less betrays her mother. And that's a really fun thing to see, and I liked getting the 2 decks, the Phyrexian deck and the Mirror and Resistance deck. I think that was very fun. And also, another Legendary Phoenix. Our first Legendary Mirror, and a Mirror Commander at that. Oh, so happy. I've always wanted a Mirror Commander. I unfortunately have not had the time to build a deck for this boy, but Urtet, Remnant of Memnarch, super fun to see. Memnarch, of course, being a being born from the legendary Mirari, who basically turned Karn's artificial plane of Argentum into Mirrodin and took beings from other planes and brought them to Mirrodin to create the plane in his own image. And Urtet seems to be clinging on to the last remnant of Memnarch. Then we get into March of the Machine, the big event set with all this stuff going on, all these partner-up pairings from all the different planes. They were plane chase decks, so we got new plane cards. So much going on. Super fun stuff. I'm just going to point out a few. Bremaz. Oh no! Bremaz was on Theros in Born of the Gods. and king of the Ereskos. Now he is the Blight of Ereskos, as he is now leading the Phyrexian army on Theros, or at least in part leading the Phyrexian army as he heads the commander deck. We have a character from Zulfir, as Zulfir becomes its own plane again. We have unusual pair-ups like Rajmi and Ragavan, which, by the way, gives Ragavan 3 separate appearances in the set. In Multiverse Legends as Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, as First Mate Ragavan for Baral and Karizev, and as Rajmi and Ragavan. This is a monkey who gets around. Saint Traft and Rem Caloris, Shalai and Halar, Alenda and Azor especially is a very bizarre one. But that was kind of the point, is really showcasing what can we do here? What can we see with when everything is at stake? Who will team up? And we also see, unfortunately, Moira and Tashar. Moira, who was in the Dominaria United commander, and Tashar, who was in the original Dominaria set. Both have succumbed to the Phyrexians. Bitterthorn, technically not a legendary creature, but it is a living weapon, so it basically becomes a legendary creature, more or less, when it enters the battlefield. I'm counting it for the purposes of this. I mean, look at it. It's a little dude. What more do you need? Nissa's sword, now that she's a Phyrexian. Cool to see. And some extra cards. These came with the pre-release packs. Each one had their own team-up card here. And they each also had showcase versions. Unfortunately, I do not have any of them. We're kind of getting near the end here of this section. I'm not going through this whole binder, just this section of it. Commander Masters had 4 precons. I love the Commander Masters precons. I have not disassembled any of them. I have only taken the cards out for the purposes of showing off them in this video. These are 4 very, very powerful decks out of the box. Super fun to play against each other. Admittedly, not all quite on the same power level. The Enchantments deck especially tends to run away with things. The Planeswalker deck tends to lag a bit behind, which, by the way, one of them was a Planeswalker face commander. We have Leori here as a backup. But some notable things here. Legendary Sliver, always love to see it. Legendary Eldrazi. This was apparently the Eldrazi who basically heralded Ulamog's return when the binds of the Eldrazi Titans were loosened sometime before the original Zendikar block. We have Onyxia here, Hand of Erebos, who is the first demigod we've gotten since the Theros Beyond set. So it's cool to see more demigods, especially one in multiple colors, despite being tied specifically with Erebos. It's interesting to see her also being in white and green. Leori, Spark Touch Hunter, is, at least to my understanding, the cat that Luca bonded with, and actually never gave a name in the original Ikoria story. He bonded with this cat and hated this cat, so much to the point where he never gave her a name. So I'm glad, I hope, I think it's been a little iffy if this is true. I hope Leori is her. I hope this is at least her, maybe in some version of events where she isn't, executed. We have Rakumarel here, who has been referenced in multiple flavor texts involving slivers. Cacophony Unleashed is interesting because it is not a legendary creature, it is an enchantment that becomes a legendary creature, Nightmare God. Cacophony is actually an artificial god, well, as artificial as gods can be on Theros. Because gods on Theros are born out of mortal belief, Ashiok basically manipulated people through nightmares to create their own god. And that is Cacophony. So I thought it was so cool to see Cacophony get its own card. And we also have an Avacyn token here from Battle at the Hell Vault. So we've got 2 more set commanders here before we're finishing up. We have Wilds of Eldraine. Another thing where I have not taken apart those decks. I've just moved the creatures here for the purposes of this video. Aura's deck and Fairy deck, both of which really fun to play right out of the box. Not a lot to say about these guys other than, like Alayla. Great to see Alayla back. We first saw her in the Brawl decks back with the original Throne of Eldraine. Fun to see her come back. We got, not how we thought we would, but we finally got a Golem commander. I imagine a lot of people, and myself included, imagine we'd eventually get a Splicer, because that has typically been the Golem, synergy cards. But, Ginger Sculptor, we get food golems. I'm happy with Ginger Brute commander. Card I'm missing here is Korvold, the new version of Korvold. Korvold is another character that we saw initially in the Brawl decks way back with the original Throne of Eldraine, sorry. I have not gotten Korvold yet, unfortunately. And finally here we have the most recently released Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Another decks I've not actually had the chance to sleeve up and play yet, but I do plan to. We have matching with the 4... Although the factions were less of a prevalent theme in the Lost Caverns of Ixalan compared to the original Ixalan block, this is more of, that callback. We have the pirates, the vampires, the dinosaurs, the merfolk. Really, really fun to see. We got the return of Admiral Beckett Brass. Love to see her. We have Pentlaza, who is Huatli's dinosaur mount, raptor mount, which is great to see. And Zolotoyic, the Smiling Flood, which, oh my god, it's an axolotl sea serpent. You don't even need to read the rest of the card. You just need to look at it, look at the name, look at the type line. Beautiful. Amazing. Amazing. Interesting to see Don Andrus here being in the pirate deck and in Grixis colors, but also being a vampire. Apparently like it says, renegade, a traitor to the Legion of Dusk. And kind of to wrap up here, we have the showcase versions. Well, this is something new they did for Lost Caverns, which is that each of the face commanders, not the alternates, just the face commanders, got their own alternate art in line with the showcase cards in the main set itself. I only have a couple of those here, Admiral Brass and Clavileño, the first of the Blessed. But I hope that's something to do more of. I think it's cool to have alternative treatments for cards that are just in the commander set. And that is all we've got for now. Past this point, I've got supplementary sets and I've got unsets, but this is where we're going to stop because this video is already admittedly way longer than I intended it to be. I just have a lot to say about these things, and honestly, I really appreciate you guys watching. It means a lot to me that there's anybody who's willing to listen to my kind of rambling about the parts of Magic that I really care about. And it's been really great getting to interact some more with this kind of community as an ambassador for this past year. And thank you all so much for watching. It really, really means the world to me. If you guys could please visit the link in the comments or in the description below to see what Magic the Gathering has got going on right now, it would be very, very much appreciated. Thank you so much to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring this video. And again, really, thank you all of you who are watching this. It really means the world to me. Please let me know what you think. I didn't get a ton of feedback about the last collection video I did. Let me know if it is something you want to see more at, and please leave a comment if it's something you don't want to see more of. That's feedback I'm very willing to hear. But if it is something that's something that you guys want to see, I'm also very happy to do more of it. So I think that's where we're gonna end it. Thank you guys so much again. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast again. Thank you, and goodbye.